Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sustainability Chats with Friends. I'm so excited to be joined by Kat Dey today, the co-founder of Ettitude and Plant Matter. And so, Kat, if you would please take a minute to introduce yourself to anyone who's listening or watching, that would be great.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Kat Dey. I'm the co-founder and president of Ettitude, which is a luxury home goods brand, and Plant Matter, which is a material innovation company. Both are based in Los Angeles, California, and we're focused on innovating new materials that are better for you and the planet. And I'm excited to be here to share more about our technology, about our journey as a company or as two companies now, and share any advice that I have.
Thank you so much. And I also remembered when I started at RISD, one of the other companies that you founded, Try the World. I remember hearing about that when I first started as well. So I'm extra excited to be
Oh,
speaking to you. But I
wow,
didn't I
that's
didn't make
that's
the
amazing.
connection. I didn't make the connection until I started researching you for this podcast.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we ended up connecting through Plant Matter. And one of the reasons why I was so excited to learn more about it is because when I was doing my master's degree in sustainability, I heavily researched the man-made cellulosic fiber industry. And I think that it's one of those industries within the textile industry that has such a big potential for change because it's both small but big. So it's 6% of the overall production of fibers, but it's also the third most produced fiber. And so I think one of the most sustainable types of man-made cellulosics is lyocell. And I would say probably the most well-known brand name is Tencel. And so I love that you all have developed your own kind of lyocell. And so I would love to hear how you kind of went about carving out your own space in the market and how you went about patenting CleanBamboo, because it is patented, right?
It's patented and trademarked. That's correct. I think before we dive into it, I think it'd be great just to do like a little primer on
Yeah, please,
MMCFs and the history of lyocell in general.
please
So,
do.
so first of all, both, MMCFs, man-made cellulosics, have existed for several decades at this point, and they started out being not so great, but the goal was really how can we create a new material out of materials that are not just, cotton, linen, and things that you would see still made out of plants. So using trees as the main feedstock was the original beginning of the man-made cellulosic fiber industry.
Mm,
And some of the first technology, which is still the most abundant among the MMCFs, is the viscose technology,
mm,
which takes this plant feedstock and dissolves it with, originally fairly harsh chemicals. And originally it was applied to both, trees and then bamboo. Bamboo is an abundant regenerative feedstock, which is a great alternative to trees. But unfortunately, there was no other technology other than viscose or rayon method in processing it. So most listeners here probably are aware that viscose does use harsh chemistry, such as sodium hydroxide, which is caustic soda, and it can cause severe burns, or carbon disulfide, which is associated with neurological harm, reproductive issues, endocrine effects on the workers who are exposed to it, and sulfuric acid, which is hazardous. And there was a push to make new methods of processing plant feedstock. And that's when lyocell came about. In actually the development of that was in the 70s, and it
mm,
got commercialized closer towards the 90s, which avoided this harsh chemistry of viscose. It uses a gentler N-methylmorpholine and oxide and MMO
mm,
solvent, which is non-toxic. And the one of the most amazing inventions there was also using a closed loop system, which
mm.
means that the water and solvent is recovered and only 2% of clean water is released into the environment. So originally lyocell was only applied to trees, and it was an amazing improvement. And today it's widely known and used in the apparel as well as in the home goods industries and even nonwovens. So
Mm.
it's growing as a percentage of the total man-made cellulosic fiber pie, but also as part of the total fiber market. And people have probably heard of Tencel. That is a trademarked version of lyocell from trees, trademarked by an Austrian company called Lenzing. And you probably have seen it in your clothes. It's, widely available now and is a really great alternative to certainly polyester. You don't want to be wearing anything with polyester, but even a much better alternative to natural fibers like cotton or even linen because of the lower usage of resources employed. So bamboo lyocell fiber process only came about a bit later. Bamboo requires a different process versus tree lyocell. And it's a very similar type of process, but it has its own unique requirements, different temperatures, different pressures, different, things like that. So it was actually already patented before Ettitude was born. It was developed in an institution and was patented by that institution that developed the fiber, the bamboo lyocell fiber process. And then the Ettitude and PLNTmatter founder and CEO, Phoebe Yu, she had spent her entire career in the textile space before founding Ettitude and PLNTmatter. She had seen firsthand how toxic the industry was and was very excited about new technologies. So she came upon this institution that developed the bamboo lyocell, and they were essentially not really doing much with that invention. So she started to work with them, partner with them directly, and invest time and resources, money into commercializing it. Essentially, what that required is multiple years of research and development to refine the spinning, the weaving, the dyeing techniques to ensure that the final textiles made from these fibers were high performance and durable, but also soft, had the perfect balance of the softness and durability that you would want. And that's how, as a result of this work, she was able to receive global exclusivity rights to use and distribute the fiber for Ettitude Holdings. So that's how it all started out. And in the process of kind of using this fiber first for Ettitude's home goods brand in the bedding space, there was a lot more research and development and testing and learning directly from now applying it in the real world of how to continue to improve it, as well as what else can be done with it. And so that's where the more exciting part came. And also part of that process was just understanding how to market this fiber to the world, because bringing new fiber usually takes a long time and adoption takes even longer, because now you have to educate the consumers, the decision makers, as far as what the benefits are. And so that's when Ettitude trademarked CleanBamboo, because we wanted to make sure that people understand that it's different from the previous bamboo fibers, which are all viscose and rayon, that we don't use those harmful chemicals, and it's a closed loop system, and that we have the traceability to prove how it starts at the farm and then goes through all of the different processes to end up on your shelf. So that's what was very important for us to communicate with one simple trademark, similar to how Tencel says that this is the best tree lyocell, the most sustainable, FSC certified and traceable. The same thing for CleanBamboo.
That's awesome. I was curious when the traceability came in, but I like that it makes sense that it's been there from the beginning. Because I look at a lot of companies, and the way in which PLNTmatter and Ettitude both convey their traceability is some of my favorite, because you break it down so easily and you have all these graphs which are really easy to see where you are at the moment and where you're going. And I like also that on Ettitudes, for instance, like you disclose the challenges that you're having. And I think more companies should do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And transparency is a big value here at Ettitude and also PLNTmatter, our sister company. So we started out with wanting to have an impact report. I think the first one was 2020. And it was kind of at the same time coincided with our application for a B Corp status. And part of the B Corp certification is actually going through a variety of different steps to ensure you have the highest ethical standards, have the best policies in place, or just having policies in place with your suppliers, your vendors, as well as for your team, your employees, everybody who's involved in your ecosystem. So as part of that big process, we decided to also have an impact report, which will communicate what we're working on, both the achievements we've had towards our goals, but also some of the challenges we might have hit along the way. Because you sometimes you don't always hit your goals. There are things that come up you didn't anticipate, and we wanted to be as transparent as possible with our customers, the public,
Mm.
about our journey.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really important. And I kind of have two questions in my mind at the moment. One is, how did you decide on the certifications that you have? And then the other is, if you don't mind talking about it, one of the challenges that I saw up on Ettitude's website was getting organic content standard certified because you weren't able to get your spinning and weaving mills to pay for it, basically because you're a small percentage of their operations, even though you were able to pay for your own factory to get it. And so I was kind of curious how that's going and what you would recommend to someone who's also in a similar position who wants this certification, but they can't quite get their supply chain to budge.
Yeah, there are so many certifications, and we have many. So we started with the ones that were the most important for us. So,
Okay.
and the ones, first we started with the ones that we already had with our partners. So, like FSC certified bamboo, for example, Eco Cert organic bamboo. We had that from the farm that we partner with. They
Mm.
already had those certifications that they had paid for. So, and
That's kind
that's
of
one of the
beneficial.
reasons we partner with them, is because they
Yeah.
already had that validation. So the next part was, which certifications do we want to add on top of that? And, one of them, for example, is our B Corp certification, which is a high
Mm.
level corporate certification. Then we have the, 1% for the planet, which is we donate 1% of our top line to environmental nonprofits. We have the climate neutral, which is now climate change climate certified, which means we offset any emissions that we have from our production, from our organization in general. So we've had those certifications, but then you're right, some of the other certifications we have less control over because we also need our partners to sign off on. And every certification requires some sort of budget.
Right. Yeah.
So you're always working on that trade-off. So for us, it's been, the OCS is a bit of a challenge right now due to some of our partners. They would need to be certified, even though we know they're following the organic process. Just
Mm.
the extra certification is an additional financial hurdle for them to jump through.
Right.
But we're gonna work through that and eventually have it. But yeah, it is definitely a journey. And for anybody working on getting certifications, definitely think about how important it is for you to have it for your own values, but also how you communicate to your consumer.
Mm. Yeah, it's really important because I hear quite often from startups that they can't quite afford to have it. But I think also the storytelling piece is so important as well. So it's,
Yeah, so for startups, if you're buying fabric, for example, you can already just start with buying certified fabric. That's you don't have to spend any
right.
money there. They already
Yeah.
have it. So
Yeah.
you don't have to do anything.
Yeah. And Plant Matter, is your fabric also certified? I'm guessing it is, right?
Yeah, so the same things. It has all the same certifications. Clean Bamboo's trademark certified, but Plant Matter is actually doing so much more on the process side, where
Mm.
our goal is to not just commercialize our commercially available clean bamboo materials, which now span over 80 different types of qualities made from fiber. They're, everything from our vegan cashmere, or what we call not cashmere, to not wool, to not linen, and even not elastic. So all of these things are made from clean bamboo or incorporate clean bamboo. And the goal is to use only plant-based materials as much as possible in the materials that we produce. But also Plant Matter is working on earlier stages of the production process, even starting with the farm, how we can process feedstock that can be diverse feedstock, not necessarily bamboo. It's really called plant matter because it's applying to multiple different types of plant resources. We're using regenerative plant resources, including, the bamboos of the world, grasses, but also trees. We can, help the existing industry do processing in a gentler way and in a lower impact way, as well as some other regenerative feedstock or even agricultural waste, things that currently don't have a use or can't be transformed into usable fiber for textiles or for other purposes like packaging or other applications. So plant matter is doing a lot more kind of earlier supply chain work that can make this process even more efficient than the currently commercialized clean bamboo.
That is so exciting.
Yeah.
I was quite impressed when I saw your catalog of all of the different fabrics that you have. How did you get to those? Like the no cashmere one, for instance.
Yeah, not cashmere. That's something we developed a couple of years ago, and it's still using our clean bamboo. The thing with our clean bamboo fiber, it is very unique. It can perform like the other lyocell's, where it can have, silky, drapey qualities, but, the traditional lyocell, that's the only qualities that it has. It is always a bit one note. It's always like silky and drapey, and therefore the applications for it are limited versus clean bamboo fiber can mimic other fibers like cotton for sure. It has a little bit of that cottonized feel to it. It can mimic wool and cashmere and these animal fibers, which is just so cool because it's got a
Yeah.
bit more of a rougher texture, like little creases in the fiber, similar how natural hair would have.
Mhm.
Which is why we wanted to experiment and see what else we could do. And so our knot cashmere was developed like 2 years ago, and it's basically a twill weave that is brushed at the end, which gives it this beautiful fluffy feel. And even like Italian cashmere buyers can't tell the difference when they
That's crazy.
feel our not cashmere versus real Italian cashmere, which is so amazing because the impact savings are just incredible on this material.
Yeah, I was surprised that clean bamboo has a lower impact than linen because in my mind, I consider linen to be one of the lower impact materials. So I was interested to see that one.
Definitely. Linen is one of the lower impact materials. So it's just so amazing that we can make a further improvement on
Mm.
even some of the more sustainable textiles available to us today.
Right.
So, yeah, versus cashmere, our not cashmere saves 80% of water, 82% of CO2, avoids 97% of eutrophication. So that's just an incredible amount of savings that we're able to achieve. And then versus linen, as you mentioned, linen is some of the more sustainable materials that we have available.
Mm.
Our what we call not linen is a blend of clean bamboo and hemp fibers.
Okay.
And what we achieved there is 51% of water savings and
Wow.
25% of CO2 savings and 56% of eutrophication
Wow.
avoided. So those are significant savings. And the other cool thing is that it's got performance attributes that are superior to actual linen. Like it's actually 99.9% antimicrobial.
Wow.
Thanks to the hemp that's included, the hemp content, which is so amazing because especially if you're making apparel or, sheets, it's just wonderful because you don't have to wash it as often. It's not going to be stinky.
Yeah.
It's so great. Antimicrobial, anti-odor, anti-static. Those are some of the really cool properties that we also can achieve in a different way too in our clean bamboo fiber that is infused with charcoal. So we
Okay. Very
we
cool.
we do have a fiber and some materials made out of it, like our knot silk. It is 90% clean bamboo and 10% organic bamboo charcoal
Okay.
infused into the fiber itself, which makes these properties, the antimicrobial, the anti-odor, anti-static, antifungal, actually stay with the fiber and the finished product for the lifespan of the product, no matter how many
Okay.
times you wash it, which is just so amazing. We're not using any chemical coatings or any treatments to achieve these properties. It's just inherent in the fiber.
That's crazy. How are they able to do that? Do they like somehow put
So
it?
it's infused in the wet spinning process. We infuse the
Okay.
organic bamboo charcoal right into the fiber.
Crazy. That is very
Yeah,
cool.
it's very cool. And I love the sheets that are made from it because we don't have to wash them as often.
Yeah, which is such a plus. Save on the
Yeah, it's
laundry as
such
well.
a plus. Yes.
What do you think is the most exciting innovation that you guys are working on at the moment?
Well, we're working on a lot of things, but I think the commercially available, the most exciting innovation would probably be our not elastic. Everybody's
Mm,
always struggling to find a non-synthetic alternative to
yeah,
elastic right now. I don't think there are any.
they're very few.
So NOTelastic is a completely plant-based alternative, and it performs better than the synthetic alternatives, which is so cool. It is made with our CleanBamboo fiber and natural rubber from the rubber tree.
Okay.
So the amazing thing is that it has incredible recovery, even better than the synthetic alternatives, and it's not much more expensive. So the cool thing
That's really
is
cool.
that people can start adopting it, right away, and it doesn't even cost that much. So I love that.
That is amazing. I love that too. One of my biggest pet peeves at the moment is seeing Instagram ads of people who are saying, this is 100% plant-based and it's non-toxic. And then I click on it and it's usually a legging or something like that. And it's got 10% elastane in. And I just
Yeah.
think the point's redundant. So yeah, I love that you guys are working on that too. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, also, blends make it more difficult to
Right.
recycle the product later.
Yeah, that's a point. Are you able to recycle yours? I know it's
Yes, I mean, at the moment we don't have that process in place,
okay.
but that's something that we are always working towards ultimately as the goal,
Mm,
which is why for our own brand we don't use any synthetics in
mm,
our materials. And we advise our partners, our customers to also avoid those types of blends if
mm.
their budget allows, and if their goals align with that, we advise them not to use any synthetics
Right. Yeah, I think that is a really great point.
so that they
And
can be recycled ultimately,
yeah, yeah, recycled or biodegradable as well, I
or
guess.
at least biodegrade without the microplastic pollution.
Yeah, that is awesome. And something else I wanted to ask you is the previous speaker to you was saying how she's leaning away from using terms like non-toxic or sustainable in her communications just because she's worried that, the backlash from it, potential loss of customers and stuff. But what I really love is that you guys are really leaning into using those terms. And so I was just curious, kind of, was there a conscious decision that was made around that, or did you just kind of think, well, these are our attributes and our characteristics, these are our great selling points, this is why we're going to talk about them? I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the landscape has definitely shifted. So Ettitude at this point is 11 years old. So Ettitude
Mm,
stands for Eco Attitude, and it was really a pioneer in the space and talking about sustainability and really making it part of the brand's DNA. It's literally in the brand name,
right.
and that is our top value internally as well as something we communicate to our customer.
Mm,
The regulatory landscape is becoming, better actually. There's actually regulations. So
yeah.
I can see how some people might hesitate to use terms that they don't have much third party backing for,
Mm,
because there have been cases of mostly large brands being sued and fined for greenwashing and making claims that they don't have a substantial proof for. So
mm,
I think that's great for the consumer that we can finally get true statements made
right.
by companies. But as a company founder or manager of these communications, I think right now it's very important, increasingly important, to make sure that everything you say has a third party validation. And that's always been part of what we've been doing here. We never say anything that we can't back up. And
Love
that's
it.
why it's been so important for us to have these third party validations, of third party life cycle assessment, so that we can actually speak about our impacts and our savings. That's been
Mm,
super important. And I highly recommend to any founder or any communicator, decision maker at a company to ensure that you have the data to back up your claims.
yeah.
So
I
I
think that's
wouldn't
really
move
great.
away. I wouldn't retreat from making a positive impact. I would retreat from vague language. Don't
Yeah.
use words biodegradable if you don't know under what conditions or how your fiber actually decomposes.
Mm,
And then if
I
you're
think,
going to say non-toxic, you need to point to certifications. Like, for example, for our company, we use OEcoTex standard 100 to ensure that we can say non-toxic. And that's a lot of fabrics have this certification. We actually went one level higher. Most fabrics that have OECOTEX standard 100, they have a class 2 certification, which just means safe
Okay.
for skin contact. We actually have a class 1 certification, which is even more rigorous, and it's baby grade safe. They have lower threshold as far as what harmful chemicals can be left on the fabric. So
Right.
virtually zero. You can't have any. Versus a safe for skin contact may still have some that, are questionable.
Right. And does that certification also include the dyes?
Yes, it's the finished textile, finished product is OECOTEX
Okay.
certified.
Very cool. Do you partner with a special dye manufacturer
Yeah.
or do you do it yourself?
No, we use Aviterra low impact reactive dyes, which
Okay.
are the most sort of non-toxic and low impact option you can get
Mm.
right now that is still scalable and gives, excellent color fastness and has consistent results batch to batch. There are other
Mm.
alternatives like natural dyes and, bacteria dyes and things like that, which we are also exploring and experimenting with. At the moment, we're using Aviterra, and it's been working really well. And because they're certified to be non-toxic, and still
Right.
we're able to get that class 1 certification, that works for our brand at the moment. But people should explore many other alternatives. There are a lot of waterless dye technologies that are coming onto the market as well that I recommend people explore.
Yeah, same. They are really cool. They are super impressive. But that's great to hear. I'm always curious. I'm always curious about the dyes, the threads, as well as the fabrics. So thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah. And then the threads, that's another story. Yeah,
Right.
most threads are polyester today.
Yeah.
You can use cotton threads, which we have explored, and I believe we're using on one of our lines. I need to double check with our chief product officer, but it's such a common problem. I hope
Mm.
somebody invents new threads that are as durable as polyester threads. And, that's one of the issues with some of the natural threads. They are not as durable, or they catch in the sewing machine.
Right.
They cause issues. So, that's an area to be disrupted.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it'd be cool if you'd be able to use clean bamboo to in the threads.
Yeah, so at the moment, I don't know if we can do that, but that's such a cool idea. We should explore that.
That would be great. And I'm curious, speaking about the companies, so obviously scaling companies, that's kind of one of the ways that you can have a better impact. But I hear from founders time and time again that they have this kind of conflict between scaling a company to spread this positive impact, but then equally with that, you're also increasing your environmental footprint. But then speaking to you personally, Ettitude was rated one of the fastest growing US private companies by Inc. on their fastest growing list. And then Try the World was also on Crane, New York's business top 3 back in the day. And so I'm kind of curious to hear your take on this. Like, what would you recommend to someone who does want to scale sustainably? Or what would you recommend to someone who's maybe holding themselves back because they don't want to have this potential negative environmental footprint?
Yeah, I can understand how scaling can feel scary, because you're adding more stuff to the world if you're manufacturing, creating a product. But if your product replaces something that has a much higher footprint, then scaling isn't the problem. It's actually the solution. So you're replacing something much worse in the world. People will continue to buy products. You really, I hope we can all buy less, but ultimately we're still buying things. We still need things. And so if you can replace something that's made in a more harmful way with something that's made in a better way, then you're actually making a positive impact. Similar to how we're looking at the impact that we're making is versus the conventional alternatives that people would have purchased. So we can see how much water we've saved versus cotton, which the number is enormous because we are actually saving 98% of water versus cotton. It's insane. Yes. I mean, that's one of the stats that really blew my mind when we did the
Yeah.
life cycle assessment several years ago. And most people don't even realize the water impact that most of their purchases have. I mean,
Yeah.
nowadays there's also AI. That's just the water impact is insane.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
that's a whole other conversation. But in the general products that we buy, so much water is used. And that water is diverted from growing food. So it is a problem. So the more we can have, savings of water, the better ultimately for humanity.
Yeah.
So, but scaling is not just improving your impact, it can also increase your influence. So if you're making something meaningful and you're getting awareness in the market, you can shift entire industries. You could be the first pioneer to do something very differently, and if you scale and get the attention and customers are buying, other companies will follow suit, and that can have an even bigger impact. And that's actually how we had this idea of launching our B2B company too. So at first we just used our technology for Ettitude, the home goods brand, and we scaled it, perfected it, and other brands would come to us and ask if they could buy our materials. And for many years we said, no, we're not prepared for that, we're not set up for that. But over time, as we've kind of ironed out our own processes, we realized we could make a much greater impact on the world if we didn't just use our technology for our own brand, but opened it up and enabled other companies to start using these lower impact materials. And so that's how Plant Matter was born.
That's awesome. I love that inspiring approach.
Yeah.
That is so great. And I guess an adjacent question would be, as you scale, you usually need investment. And through kind of my own personal experience with it, but also just hearing from friends as well who are more on the maybe founder, innovator, creator side, I find it hard to have these like, for instance, you and I met on Instagram. I find it hard to have those kinds of casual interactions with investors. And so I was curious to hear kind of what your experience is with investors, and also what do you think creates that kind of barrier between innovators and investors, especially in the sustainability space?
I don't know if there is really a barrier. I think investors are busy. That's kind of one thing to keep in mind. They are seeing a lot of products, pitches, brands, companies, solutions. And so getting their attention is more difficult than other folks. So my recommendation is, yeah, it's okay to use Instagram. If they're on it and if they're active on Instagram, go ahead and send them a DM. But the best way to reach them is through introductions. They tend to
Right.
open those emails a bit more.
Right. That makes
And
sense.
they'll probably give you more time, more of their attention if it comes through a warm intro.
Right. That does make a lot of sense. Are there any
Yeah.
spaces that you know of, or like incubators that you've heard of that you particularly like?
Actually, I would recommend the Mills Fabrica in London.
Yes, I love them. They're great. I went to the exhibition the other month.
Oh, that's amazing.
They are
So
very
we're really
cool.
excited because we will be participating in their January through June of 2026 exhibit.
Okay,
And
amazing.
they're
I'll go
just
see it.
amazing connectors for sustainability. So for folks in the space, early stage innovators, I think that's a really great community to be a part of.
Yeah, that is a great recommendation. And they're so friendly too. I've met some of them at
Super friendly.
conferences before. They're so, so, so friendly.
Yeah,
That is amazing.
absolutely.
Okay, so then to close us out, I'd love to hear what your one curiosity is that you'd like our listeners or watchers to look more into. It could be anything, a theory, a book, a film, a movement, a way of thinking, like literally anything at all.
Yeah, I think if I could inspire one curiosity, it would be the habit of asking, what is the true cost of this product? Not
Mm,
just the price tag, but the water, energy, labor, emissions, and waste behind it. I think when people start exploring that question, it transforms how they consume and what they value. A question to just keep in mind.
that is such a great question. Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing all of your advice.
Thank you.